What happens when one of the most controversial figures in modern royalty sits down with America's most trusted news anchor and decides to throw decades of media training out the window? In just 21 seconds, a single comment would transform what was supposed to be a routine interview into television history's most explosive meltdown, leaving viewers speechless and one former duchess storming off set in a fit of rage that no one saw coming. Anderson Cooper adjusted his tie one final time as the studio lights blazed overhead. The familiar red backdrop of his show gleamed behind him, and across the sleek desk sat Meghan Markle, flanked by two other panel guests who had been invited to discuss media representation and public service. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a respected communications professor, sat to Meghan's left, while journalist Marcus Thompson occupied the chair to her right. The atmosphere felt charged, electric, like storm clouds gathering before a downpour. Good evening, I'm Anderson Cooper, and tonight we're discussing the evolving relationship between public figures and media responsibility. Anderson began, his voice carrying that distinctive calm authority that had made him a household name. Joining me tonight are Dr. Sarah Mitchell from Columbia University, journalist Marcus Thompson, and of course, Meghan, Duchess of Sussex. Meghan shifted in her seat, her posture rigid despite her practiced smile. Thank you for having me, Anderson, though I should mention, I prefer just Meghan these days. Of course, Anderson nodded diplomatically. Let's start with a broad question about public service and media scrutiny. Dr. Mitchell, how do you think public figures should navigate criticism while maintaining their advocacy work? Dr. Mitchell leaned forward thoughtfully. Well, Anderson, I believe authenticity is key. When public figures try to control every narrative, it often backfires. The public can sense genuine commitment versus performative gestures. Meghan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. That's interesting, Dr. Mitchell. Though I wonder if you've ever actually experienced the level of scrutiny that comes with global media attention. I think Dr. Mitchell raises a valid point about authenticity, Marcus chimed in, sensing the tension. As journalists, we can usually tell when someone is being genuine versus when they're trying to manage their image. Manage their image? Meghan's voice rose slightly. Is that what you think I've been doing? Managing my image while dealing with racist attacks and deliberate misrepresentation? Anderson maintained his composure, his journalist instincts kicking in. Meghan, can you help us understand what you mean by deliberate misrepresentation? Can you give us specific examples? Where do I even start, Anderson? Meghan's hands gestured dramatically. The British press twisted every single thing I did. When I touched my baby bump, they called it attention-seeking. When I didn't touch it, they said I was cold. When I spoke up about important issues, they called me difficult. When I stayed quiet, they called me calculating. Dr. Mitchell nodded sympathetically, but interjected carefully. Those sound incredibly frustrating, Meghan, but don't you think some public figures have managed similar scrutiny while maintaining positive relationships with media? Meghan's eyes flashed. Like who? Give me one example of someone who faced what I faced. Well, Dr. Mitchell paused, choosing her words carefully. Michelle Obama faced significant scrutiny and racism, yet she managed to maintain dignity and build bridges rather than burn them. The studio fell silent. Anderson could feel the temperature in the room shift as Meghan's expression hardened. Did you just compare me to Michelle Obama? Meghan's voice was dangerously quiet. Marcus tried to intervene. I think Dr. Mitchell was simply pointing out that there are different approaches to handling criticism. No. Meghan cut him off, her voice gaining volume. She's sitting there, having never lived my experience, telling me I should be more like Michelle Obama. Do you have any idea how insulting that is? Anderson leaned forward, his journalist training taking over. Meghan, I think Dr. Mitchell was trying to highlight different strategies for dealing with criticism, not making a direct comparison of your experiences. Different strategies? Meghan laughed bitterly. Anderson, you have no idea what it's like to be a biracial woman married into the most traditional institution in the world, dealing with not just regular media criticism, but actual threats to my safety and my child's safety. Dr. Mitchell spoke gently. Meghan, I completely understand that your experience has been unique and traumatic, but don't you think there's value in learning from others who face similar challenges? Similar challenges? Meghan's voice was rising steadily. Dr. Mitchell, with all due respect, Michelle Obama never had to deal with her own family selling stories to tabloids. She never had to deal with her husband's family questioning her children's skin color. She had support from day one. Anderson could see this spiraling, but tried to maintain control. Let's take a step back here. I think everyone can agree that public scrutiny affects people differently, and we should focus on. No, Anderson. Meghan interrupted sharply. I'm tired of taking steps back. I'm tired of being told to be more graceful, more like someone else, more palatable. Do you know what it's like to have your own father stage paparazzi photos and then lie about it on television? Marcus attempted to redirect. Meghan, family dynamics are certainly complicated when you're in the public eye. Complicated? Meghan turned on him. Complicated is when your family member gives interviews calling you names, making up stories, all for money. That's not complicated, Marcus. That's betrayal. The studio audience, though not visible, could be felt holding its collective breath. Anderson knew he was witnessing something unprecedented. I understand you've dealt with family challenges, Anderson said carefully. But tonight we're here to discuss media responsibility and public service. How do you think your experience could help other public figures navigate similar situations? Meghan stared at him for a long moment. You want to know what I've learned, Anderson? I've learned that no matter what you do, no matter how much good you try to accomplish, there will always be people sitting in comfortable studios telling you you're doing it wrong. Dr. Mitchell shifted uncomfortably. Meghan, I never said you were doing anything wrong. I was simply suggesting that there are different approaches. Different approaches, Meghan repeated mockingly. Let me ask you something, Dr. Mitchell. When was the last time you had photographers camping outside your mother's house? When was the last time complete strangers felt entitled to comment on your marriage, your mothering, your worth as a human being? The conversation was clearly veering into dangerous territory, but Anderson pressed on. These are all valid concerns, Meghan, but how do you think public figures can work constructively with media rather than against it? Work constructively? Meghan's laugh was sharp. Anderson, I tried that. I did everything right. I followed protocol. I smiled when I was supposed to smile. I stayed quiet when I was told to stay quiet. And where did it get me? Marcus tried once more to find middle ground. But surely there were positive experiences with media as well? Were there? Meghan challenged. Name one story that painted me in a positive light during my time as a working royal. Just one, Marcus. The panel fell silent, and Anderson realized they had reached a critical moment. Marcus cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. Well, there were stories about your charity work, your visits to schools. My charity work? Meghan's voice dripped with sarcasm. You mean the stories that called my charity visits publicity stunts? The ones that criticized my choice of clothes as too expensive or too cheap or too American? Those positive stories? Anderson could see the interview slipping away from him entirely. Meghan, I think what Marcus is trying to acknowledge is that media coverage is rarely all negative or all positive. There's usually a spectrum. A spectrum, Meghan repeated flatly. Anderson, let me paint you a picture of this spectrum. When Kate wore a dress, it was elegant and timeless. When I wore the same designer, it was extravagant and inappropriate. When Kate touched her pregnant belly, it was maternal instinct. When I did it, it was attention-seeking behavior. That's your spectrum. Dr. Mitchell attempted to interject diplomatically. Those double standards you're describing do sound frustrating and unfair. Frustrating and unfair? Meghan turned to face her fully. Dr. Mitchell, they weren't just frustrating and unfair, they were calculated and deliberate. There were people whose entire job was to make me look bad, no matter what I did. Anderson sensed an opportunity to steer the conversation back on track. That's a serious allegation, Meghan. Are you saying there was an organized effort to portray you negatively? I'm not just saying it, Anderson. I'm telling you it happened. There were coordinated campaigns, strategic leaks, carefully timed stories designed to undermine everything I tried to do. Marcus leaned forward with genuine curiosity. But Meghan, don't all public figures deal with some level of strategic media manipulation? How was your situation different? Meghan's eyes narrowed. How was it different? Marcus, did other public figures have their private letters to their fathers published in newspapers? Did other members of the royal family have their personal text messages leaked to the press? Those are certainly invasions of privacy, Dr. Mitchell acknowledged. But how do you think public figures should respond when their privacy is violated? How should they respond? Meghan's voice was getting louder again. They should have the support of the institutions they represent. They should have legal protection. They should have someone, anyone, standing up for them instead of throwing them under the bus to protect other people. Anderson could feel the interview reaching a boiling point. When you say throwing you under the bus, what specifically do you mean? I mean exactly that, Anderson. When stories needed to be killed about other family members, suddenly there would be a negative story about me. When someone else made a mistake, somehow it became my fault. I was the perfect scapegoat because I was new, I was different, and I didn't have decades of relationships protecting me. The studio was dead silent, except for the hum of cameras. Marcus tried to find a diplomatic response. That sounds like an incredibly isolating experience. Isolating doesn't begin to cover it, Meghan said, her voice cracking slightly. Imagine being told that your feelings don't matter, that your mental health doesn't matter, that your safety doesn't matter, because protecting the institution is more important than protecting you. Dr. Mitchell spoke softly. Meghan, that sounds traumatic. But don't you think there might have been miscommunication or misunderstandings that could have been resolved? Meghan stared at her incredulously. Miscommunication? Doctor? Mitchell, when I told him I was having thoughts of self-harm and asked for help, I was told it wouldn't be good for the institution if I sought treatment. That's not miscommunication. That's institutional cruelty. Anderson knew he was witnessing television history, but his journalistic instincts kicked in. That's an incredibly serious accusation, Meghan. You're saying you were denied mental health treatment? I'm saying I was told that getting help would reflect poorly on the family, so I should just deal with it quietly and keep smiling for the cameras. Marcus looked genuinely shocked. But surely there were people within the institution who wanted to help you. Were there? Meghan challenged. Because when I reached out to HR, they told me I wasn't actually an employee, so they couldn't help me. When I reached out to senior staff, they told me to talk to my husband. When my husband tried to get help, he was told it would create a scandal. Dr. Mitchell was clearly struggling with how to respond. Meghan, if all of this is true, why didn't you speak out sooner? Why didn't I speak out sooner? Meghan's voice rose dangerously. Because I was trying to make it work. Because I believed in the institution. Because I thought if I just worked harder, tried harder, smiled more, eventually they would accept me. Anderson could sense they were approaching a critical moment. What changed your mind? What changed my mind? Meghan laughed bitterly. When I realized that they would rather destroy me than protect me. When I realized that my son would never be safe in that environment. When I realized that staying silent was killing me. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees as Meghan's words hung in the air. Marcus tried to find some middle ground. Meghan, surely you can understand that institutions like the monarchy have protocols and traditions that might seem restrictive to outsiders. Protocols and traditions? Meghan's voice was ice cold. Marcus, are you seriously defending an institution that told me my mixed-race child couldn't have security protection because he wasn't important enough? Anderson felt his journalistic instincts flare. Meghan, are you saying your son was denied security because of his race? I'm saying there were conversations about how dark his skin might be and whether that would be a problem for the institution. The studio fell into stunned silence. Dr. Mitchell looked genuinely horrified. Meghan, that's what, Dr. Mitchell? Hard to believe? Shocking? Welcome to my reality. Anderson knew he had to ask the follow-up question. Meghan, those are extremely serious allegations. Can you tell us who had these conversations? I'm not going to name names, Anderson, because unlike some people, I still have some loyalty left. But those conversations happened, and they happened at the highest levels. Marcus was clearly struggling to process what he was hearing. But Meghan, surely you understand that people might find these claims difficult to believe without more specific information. Meghan turned on him with fury in her eyes. People might find them difficult to believe? Marcus, do you think I would make up conversations about my child's skin color? Do you think I would lie about something so devastating? Marcus held up his hands defensively. Meghan, I'm not suggesting you would lie. I'm simply saying that without more context or corroboration, it's difficult for people to understand the full picture. The full picture? Meghan's voice was trembling with rage. Let me give you the full picture, Marcus. I was pregnant, scared, and being told that my unborn child was being discussed like a problem to be solved. That's your full picture. Dr. Mitchell tried to intervene gently. Meghan, I can't imagine how painful that must have been. But don't you think there might be ways to address these issues constructively rather than airing them publicly? Constructively? Meghan whirled around to face her. Dr. Mitchell, I tried constructive for 3 years. I followed every rule, respected every protocol, and bit my tongue until it bled. Where did being constructive get me? Anderson could feel the interview spiraling completely out of control, but he pressed forward. Meghan, you've made some very serious accusations tonight. How do you respond to people who might say you're attacking an institution that can't defend itself in the same way? Can't defend itself? Meghan's laugh was sharp and bitter. Anderson, that institution has an entire media machine working for it 24 hours a day. They have press secretaries, communications teams, and friendly journalists on speed dial. How exactly can't they defend themselves? But there are protocols about what they can and cannot say publicly, Marcus pointed out. Protocols, Meghan spat. There are protocols when it comes to defending me, but somehow those same protocols disappear when they need to plant stories or correct narratives that benefit them. Dr. Mitchell looked genuinely concerned. Meghan, you're describing a very dark picture of an institution that millions of people respect and admire. Millions of people respect and admire something they think they know? Meghan shot back. They see the pretty dresses and the waving and the charity visits. They don't see what happens behind closed doors when the cameras stop rolling. Anderson knew he was witnessing something unprecedented, but he had to ask the hard questions. Meghan, given everything you've told us tonight, do you regret your decision to join the royal family? Do I regret it? Meghan paused, her voice dropping to a whisper. Anderson, I regret believing that love would be enough. I regret thinking that if I worked hard enough and cared enough, I could change things from the inside. But surely there were positive moments, Marcus suggested hopefully. Surely there were people within the institution who supported you. Were there? Meghan's voice was hollow. Because when I needed support the most, when I was drowning and begging for help, those people were nowhere to be found. Dr. Mitchell tried once more to find common ground. Meghan, institutions are made up of individuals. Surely not everyone within the royal family felt the same way. Not everyone? Meghan's voice suddenly exploded with fury. Dr. Mitchell, let me tell you about those individuals. When stories were written, calling me everything from difficult to demanding to a bully, not one person from that family picked up the phone to check on me. Not one. Anderson could see they were approaching a point of no return. Meghan, those are very strong words about people who are still your family. My family? Meghan stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the studio floor. Anderson, my family doesn't throw me to the wolves to protect their own image. My family doesn't use me as a human shield when they need to distract from their own scandals. The studio fell into shocked silence. Marcus tried to salvage the situation. Meghan, perhaps we should take a moment to... Take a moment to what? Meghan's voice was shaking with rage. To pretend that everything I just told you didn't happen? To go back to the polite fiction that everyone wants to believe? Dr. Mitchell stood up as well, clearly alarmed. Meghan, I think everyone here understands that you've been through something traumatic, but what? Meghan turned on her. But I should be more grateful? But I should keep quiet? But I should protect people who never protected me? Anderson rose from his chair, trying to regain control of his show. Meghan, I think we all want to understand your experience, but perhaps we could approach this more calmly. More calmly? Meghan's voice reached a crescendo. Anderson, there is nothing calm about watching your mental health deteriorate while an entire institution stands by and does nothing. There is nothing calm about having your child's security threatened because of the color of his skin. Meghan, Dr. Mitchell said softly, perhaps we should continue this conversation off camera. Off camera? Meghan spun around. So we can have another private conversation that gets twisted and leaked to the press? So you can all go back to your comfortable lives while I get crucified in the media again? Marcus tried desperately to de-escalate. Meghan, no one here is your enemy. We're all trying to understand. Understand? Meghan's voice was pure venom. Marcus, you want to understand? Here's what you need to understand. I gave up everything for that institution. My career, my friends, my family, my identity. And when I needed them most, they abandoned me. Anderson made one final attempt to control the situation. Meghan, I think we should wrap up this segment and perhaps continue this conversation privately. No, Anderson. Meghan's voice was deadly quiet. I'm done with private conversations. I'm done with being told to handle things quietly. I'm done protecting people who never protected me. She began walking toward the studio exit, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. You want a story? You want drama? Here's your story. I trusted an institution that chewed me up and spit me out. I believed in people who used me and discarded me. And now everyone wants to act shocked when I finally tell the truth. Anderson called after her desperately. Meghan, please, let's discuss this. She paused at the studio door, turning back one final time. Her voice was ice cold and filled with finality. There's nothing left to discuss, Anderson. I've said everything I came here to say. The studio door slammed shut behind her, leaving Anderson, Dr. Mitchell, and Marcus sitting in stunned silence. The cameras continued to roll, capturing three people who looked like they had just witnessed a natural disaster. Anderson stared at the closed door for a long moment before turning back to his remaining guests. Well, he said quietly, his famous composure finally beginning to crack. That was certainly unexpected. Dr. Mitchell sank back into her chair, looking shaken. I've never seen anything quite like that in all my years studying communications." Marcus just shook his head slowly, still staring at the door where Meghan had made her dramatic exit. "I don't think any of us have." Anderson looked directly into the camera, his professional instincts finally kicking back in. "We'll be right back after this break." As the cameras stopped rolling, the three remaining panelists sat in the deafening silence of the studio, each trying to process what had just happened. Outside, they could hear commotion as security and production staff dealt with the aftermath of the most explosive interview in recent television history. The red light on the camera finally went dark, but the impact of those 21 seconds that started it all would reverberate far beyond the walls of that New York studio.